we may agree, we may not agree, but that professor's got the right to do the research, and we're going to stand behind them anyway. I will defend to the end your right to do the research and publish it. That's pretty much what it is. A few months ago, there was a big open letter put out by Heterodox Academy, the Academic Freedom Alliance, and I think the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression came out to basically write with an open letter, basically encouraging university administrations to maintain institutional neutrality. And here's the thing I have to say on that front, is that it's something that I, in general principle, agree with. Whether or not it can be achieved, I don't know at this point, given the ways of the university administration. But recently, there was this commentary that came out from the editor-in-chief of Science related to institutional neutrality. So I want to get to the point here with this, but first I want to go back to the actual letter itself to make a point here on what was said and the principles of institutional neutrality. Then I want to get to Holden's commentary, Holden Thorpe being the editor-in-chief of Science, and make some points based upon that. Now, again, why do I talk about the universities? Well, the universities are where we train the next generation of scientists and where a tremendous amount of scientific research is done. As such, it is of benefit to be talking about the universities. So let me go down to the open letter. An open letter to college and university trustees and regents. It's time to adopt institutional neutrality. The Academic Freedom Alliance, Heterodox Academy, and the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression are nonpartisan organizations dedicated to defending and advancing freedom of speech and open inquiry in higher education. We stand together in sending this entreaty to college and university trustees and regents across the country during this time of growing national concern about the fate and security of free thought on campuses. If you've been around on this channel long enough, you've seen the data and things that I've been able to show on that front. It is time for those entrusted with ultimate oversight authority for your institutions to restore truth-seeking as the primary mission of higher education by adopting a policy of institutional neutrality on social and political issues that do not concern core academic matters or institutional operations. In recent years, colleges and universities have increasingly weighed in on social and political issues. This has led our institutions of higher education to become politicized and has created an untenable situation whereby they are expected to weigh in on all social and political issues. Most critically, these stances risk establishing an orthodox view on campus, threatening the pursuit of knowledge for which higher education exists. As the University of Chicago's famous Calvin Report of 1967 states, a policy of institutional neutrality is premised on the defining mission of the university, to pursue truth through, quote, the discovery, improvement, and dissemination of knowledge. And to accomplish this mission, quote, a university must sustain an extraordinary environment of freedom of inquiry and maintain an independence from political fashions, passions, and pressures. This is the key thing about the institutional neutrality. You cannot be pressured into doing one thing or another. That's the point of this, or what the hopeful goal is. Furthermore, the report recognizes there is no mechanism by which the university can reach a collective position without inhibiting that full freedom of dissent on which it thrives. In short, individual faculty members and students are the instrument of dissent and criticism. The university, on the other hand, is the home and sponsor of critics. Where to draw the line between institutional neutrality and position-taking is a matter of careful prudential judgment. But, as the Calvin Report notes, there should be a heavy presumption against the university taking collective action or expressing opinions on the political and social issues of the day. Smart observers will recognize good faith efforts to apply this principle. A useful maxim to guide decision makers is, quote, if an academic institution is not required to adopt a position in order to fulfill its mission of intellectual freedom or operational capacity, it is not required to adopt a position. For a neutrality principle to work, it must be publicly announced and adhered to on a consistent and faithful basis. Making an exception inexorably leads to pressure to make others and to allegations of bias. Critically, institutional neutrality applies only to leaders of the and units of the institution. This is not true. This is true not only for the central administration, but also for the units of the university, such as schools, departments, centers, and programs. It does not apply to faculty members and students, the critics, either individually or as members of a voluntary, non-institutional association. Given the need to prepare for the execution of institutional neutrality policy, we call on you, the trustees and regents of America's colleges and universities, to publicly adopt such a policy by the beginning of the 2024-25 academic year. We and the nation are watching campus events with a keen interest and would applaud this fulfillment of your fiduciary duty. Now, we'll point out this letter was sent in February of 2024. The 2024-2025 academic year begins next month, as it were, for most universities. So I'm doubtful that they will make it happen, because I don't know of how many that have actually announced that. But such is the point here, and two critical things to say. It doesn't just mean presidents. It means department heads. It means deans. It means center directors. All of those kinds of administrative positions. You should not professionally, in your representation of that position, and neither should your institution as a whole, take a particular stand on any of the political issues of the day going on here, because who knows what your individual members actually think if they have very different views on things on that front. And that's not to say there's not limits and there are not times when things should be made statements, because again, if it's principal to the core functioning of the university, then yes. That's the statement itself that was given to the different universities. This is for Holden's commentary. Neutrality's effect on academic freedom. Now, the idea that universities in the United States, and especially their presidents, so Holden focuses on presidents, by the way, should be politically neutral was taking hold long before their recent struggles in responding to the Israel-Hamas war. A document called the Calvin Report that was produced at the University of Chicago in 1967 famously declared that, quote, the university is the home and sponsor of critics. It is not itself the critic. Correct statement. It should be the home and sponsor of critics. It should never, ever be the critic itself, because then it doesn't help with the production of knowledge and there being a diversity of viewpoints involved in the pursuit of that knowledge. Anyway, thus, in matters of political controversy, the university best serves its faculty and students by remaining neutral so that those with the disciplinary expertise can opine freely. Not just with the disciplinary expertise. Come on, it can be really anybody involved there. But I digress. Neutrality makes good sense when it comes to political issues that by their nature are matters of opinion. But what about matters of science, especially when a finding has powerful political implications, such as studies on climate or vaccines? Where should universities draw the line? They shouldn't say anything. They shouldn't say anything. That would be my comment on that. I very much agree with the sort of notions of neutrality there, because why is it the university's job to comment on scientific studies about anything? Why is it their job? I'll love to know an answer on that one. The proponents of blanket neutrality assert that universities should not only stay out of geopolitical matters, but should also not comment on findings of their faculty's research if they are politically sensitive. On the one hand, yes, I can see that being the particular thing, the politically sensitive part. But my kind of more point of this is, no, don't comment at all. Now, I can understand, recognizing a scientist getting an award for something and they happen to be at your university, fine, go do that. But weighing in on whether or not you think the work is good, the work is bad, forget politically sensitive for a moment, work is good or work is bad in the public sphere when that might have already been done via the peer review process, with the exception of such cases as there being ethics complaints and violations that a university would be getting involved in disciplinary action to begin with, in which case they should not comment necessarily anyway. That's a whole other commentary for another day, but you don't necessarily need to bias the public one way or another in terms of a disciplinary investigation of a professor either. But this is an interesting thing. Why should a university comment at all on the findings of somebody's research? Now, what I mean comment here, I was trying to hint at it, but I'll just say it outright. What I mean by comment is not necessarily so-and-so professor found X at their work. No, I mean so-and-so professor found X and we think it's great, or so-and-so professor found X and we think it's awful, as the university saying that. That I don't think is appropriate. But a university saying, hey, our professor found this. Let them do it. I think that might be okay. But anyway, that's another comment. Does that paint with too broad a brush? There is a distinction, between the science itself and opinions about whether and how to act on it. The results of the vaccine trial are neutral. However, the role of government in mandating vaccines is political. So why should the university be commenting? Just a point. Again, why should the university be commenting in one way or another about what somebody should do based upon a study that is neutral? Peter Hans, president of the 17-campus University of North Carolina system, told me he would not support or oppose a particular scientific finding, but, quote, will defend all day the faculty's right to share that finding with the world. Exactly. Jenna Robinson, a staunch proponent of neutrality and the president of the James Martin Center for Academic Renewal, went even further, saying to me, quote, I think it's better for presidents not to comment on the content of the research. And University of Chicago President Paul Alivisatos, I can never pronounce his name right, also a renowned nanoscientist, told me that the proper approach is wholesale neutrality, with the university standing as a place where, quote, both popular and dissenting viewpoints are thoughtfully subject to reason and evidenced debate. A president seeking to foreclose debates by issuing institutional proclamations will inadvertently erode the credibility of the university in the eyes of the public and policymakers alike. So that I actually very much agree with the sentiment of those three folks in there, that it's not really the university's job to comment on anything in terms of particularly saying, one way or another, we think it should be this or this should be the policy or what have you, particularly with respect to things that are not necessarily going to affect the university's core function at all and core purpose. And so, yeah, I kind of agree with Peter Hans here. I may completely disagree with whatever the finding is, but I will defend to the end your right to talk about that finding. Many critics of neutrality are disheartened by this hands-off approach. The prolific biomedical scientist Eric Topol described the stance to me as, quote, a consistent path of being spineless, hiding in plain sight, ducking controversy, appearing to be dissociated from the faculty and science that they the science that they publish. Is it so? What would stop a university in the case of a controversy from saying, basically, we don't agree or disagree, but our professor has the right to publish what he wants to publish, and so long as it doesn't violate the ethical codes of professional ethics, code of conduct, there's no research fraud, that kind of thing, then, let them publish it. We're going to stand by their right to publish the work. Don't give a damn whether any of us in the university agree or disagree. What's to stop them from doing that? That's not ducking controversy. That's defending a professor's right to discuss something, to publish something still, even if the administration, which here's kind of my thing with the institutional neutrality thing, I should not have any idea whether or not an institutional leadership is in favor or against something with respect to science, politics, or anything. I should have no idea. Let's put it that way. That would be my kind of preference with this. Same kind of thing here. Shouldn't matter what necessarily the opinions of the leadership are. What matters is they basically say, it doesn't matter what our opinions are. We're going to defend those folks to do the research they want to do. It's discouraging that institutions can validate the scientific research of faculty by hiring and promoting them, but then opt for neutrality if the findings have political implications. I don't fault the presidents for adopting this position. The polarizing politics of the moment give them little choice. But it is a major shift from an era when university presidents were regarded as both academic and moral leaders who stood up for the truth in times of crisis. Standing up for the truth and the pursuit of the truth, yes, is the job of the university. What's different is whether or not you put your thumb on the scale to say something is or isn't correct. And it happens to be a professor at your own university who's publishing those things. That is different. You can validate scientific research in the hiring and promoting, but that doesn't mean you necessarily agree with all of their findings. That's two different things. And in the institutional leadership side of things, yeah, I should have no idea what the beliefs of leadership are. And again, I don't have a problem with the leadership commenting in their own personal capacity when they're not representing the university. Go for it. But with the sort of institutional capacity of it, there should be no institutional statement to say X about such thing. Professor X is right, Professor X is wrong, that kind of thing, or condemning the professor, anything like that. There should be nothing of that. But anyway, for the scientists themselves, university neutrality is a two-edged sword. It comes with a strong commitment by administrators to back the rights of the faculty to carry out the research, wherever the results may lead. But the trade-off is that if findings are politically sensitive, the institution is going to stay out of the fray. That's not a guarantee. That's not a guarantee that the institution would stay out of the fray. And I would think, it's an option that could happen, but I would think what the institution would do, if it has the gumption to do it, would be very different in saying, as I was kind of saying before, nah, we may agree, this university may agree, it may not agree. We don't care. That professor has the right to do the research they're going to do, and we're going to back them doing the research unless you can show me there's fraud. That's one of the exceptions there. It's the only time a university should stay away from it is this should back away from supporting a professor is in cases of research fraud or violations of law or such egregious unprofessional conduct, things like that. That would be, folks have been fired for those kinds of things before. That kind of thing. So, no, it's not necessarily a trade-off at all. I think that's a bit of a false dichotomy there, although that might not be the right phrasing with it, just to say, but it doesn't follow necessarily that just because you're going to have strong commitment of administrators to back faculty carrying out the research, that they're going to stay out of it, that they're going to, not be involved in defending the professor at all, the professor's right to do something even if they disagree with it, and hopefully you never know whether or not they disagree. That's the point here. You can't necessarily say that for sure with that statement, I don't think. But if neutrality is to be the order of the day, then scientists need to take extra care not to be intimidated when their research ignites a political storm. Dartmouth College President Jan Bjellock put it like this, quote, "I think a scientist's job is to do the best work they can and publish the findings that they believe will be most impactful to humanity, regardless of whether or not the conclusions align with one particular idea." For the most part, I agree with that. That's actually not a problem there to me. Pursuit of the truth. At the same time, scientists need to hold the institutions accountable for their commitments to stand behind their researchers in every other way. True neutrality means that institutions would not take actions to defund or de-emphasize research because it is controversial. But there are worrying signs that this is already happening. Stanford University shut down its disinformation research program after it was hit by lawsuits from conservative groups. Unless this reciprocity holds, there is a danger that universities will shirk their responsibility and stand up not for any particular finding, but for a more overriding principle, the importance of independent scholarship. So look, overall, I do think Holden has a fair concern that, they're going to university's going to run away, but that's not necessarily a guarantee to happen. And it seemed to be portrayed as that before, but I'm just noting that maybe that's not the case. Interesting to tell sometimes when you're reading these things. I remember about the Stanford program a little bit. I can't comment on that particular one because I haven't versed in it as much, but there is questions of concern about what do you do when something has become very biased. And like I said, it should be just about research fraud or issues there that should be the problem. And the statement that's made here about true neutrality, I don't actually disagree with, in that basically it should boil down to one thing. If there's something that happens, the university should basically say, you know what, we may agree, we may not agree, but that professor's got the right to do the research, and we're going to stand behind them anyway. I will defend to the end your right to do the research and publish it. That's pretty much what it is. That's pretty much statement of institutional neutrality in a nutshell. And that's what it should be. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button on the way out the door. Comment on the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, all that lovely good jazz. And until next time, I'm Adrienne. Stay curious.